Well, Victor, thank you for taking the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Good, good. I appreciate it. And I'm curious. I was going through a lot of reading on you, and I know that you come from a boxing family that you have so many people in your family involved in and around the sport. When you were a kid, what would you say? Either doesn't have to be something in the ring; it could just be anything. If there was something playing on TV or something you saw as a kid, what would you say your earliest boxing memory is?
Earliest boxing memory? I mean, it would probably be the first day in the gym. My dad went in the gym. It wasn't even for us, actually. He went
Mhm.
into the gym for himself. He had us, so he took us with him. We kind of just sat there, but that was pretty much my first boxing experience there. Um, just kind of seeing the gym, walking around, sitting down. Being a kid, it's 5 years old, probably 4 years old. Um, that was pretty much it. Once I was seven, that's when I really started.
And was it being around the sport that made you want to do it? The fact that your father was working out in boxing, or was it just something that you kind of felt fascinated with?
Both. I was
Mhm.
fascinated with it for sure. Running around, being 4 or 5, hitting the speed bag real quick. Running by and then hitting the double M bag, and but then once I started doing it, it was something that I just loved it from the very beginning, and haven't even done another sport except for like through middle school. I wrestled in high school. I wrestled, but it's still another combat sport. I haven't done any other sport since.
I read this crazy story where you were I think you were 4 years old and you had a spinal tap that basically went bad.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I know that was a long time ago, but I mean, I'm assuming that it was pretty traumatic and that you still have memories of that today.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I remember just like not being able to move at all. Like I remember being confused. Like, why can't I move?
Mhm.
And I was always being helped everywhere. And then eventually I started, slowly being able to use my legs, and then like crawling around. I would crawl around. I would go through jeans like crazy when I was little because I was crawling around once I got to that point. And then it just eventually got back onto my feet.
I mean, it's incredible to think about how close disaster almost came from this fluke, incident. And then here you are, at seven, boxing. Have your parents ever kind of talked to you about like, thank God it went the right way and how scary that moment was?
Not really, but we always
Mhm.
talk about the fact that, wow, how did that end up being? How did your feet and your footwork end up being like one of your main pieces? Like, I remember this, we used to go up to a trail before this all happened, and I used to just like hop all the way up to the top of it. It was miles that would just hop all the way up to the top, hop all the way down. This happened. And so it was kind of different, but I'm too young to actually remember like little detail. I just remember being confused at that time, and then just working to the point where I got back on my feet, running around, and then into the gym I went. And my feet being my feet were my number one uh, trait.
Mhm. The the work that you did as an amateur, I mean, you started boxing, from a pretty early age, and you had a lot of success. I mean, it's incredible looking at your amateur resume. Some of the fighters that you fought during that time. I mean, having beaten Virgil Ortiz twice. I think there was you fought Duke Reagan, Keyshawn Davis, Shakur Stevenson. I mean, what were those experiences like, and how much did it shape you when you were going through them fighting now as we see these great fighters? What was it like then, and how do you view it now?
We were all at each other's heads at that point. We were all training to be better than the other one. We all knew each other. We all know each other now, but it's different now because now it really means something now.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I grew up. I beat Virgil Ortiz like 3 times. Adano Choa, I beat him in the nationals. I fought all these guys, and so everybody has their different way into the pros. And I didn't have the easiest one because no one looked up to where I was, so I had to work twice as hard. And eventually, in the amateurs, they started to realize like, oh, it was me and my brother. We always traveled
Mhm.
together. We were fighting, and he was, I think, the age class below me. But they always knew the Morales brothers from the Pacific Northwest. After a few years, that's just what it was. Like, oh, the PNW isn't really necessarily good in the amateur boxing scene. At least it wasn't at the time. And we really brought it up with us.
Looking back at those experiences and, so many great fighters that you fought, who would you say gave you the toughest time back then?
I would say Shakur, not necessarily it being the toughest fight
Hmm.
physically, but I fought him 3 times. Um, the first time, not easy, or not, wasn't close. Second one, trained a little bit. And now I knew who he was. Train harder, was a lot closer. And then the third fight, I thought that I had the fight easy, but politics, the way politics were at the time, they gave it to him. And I think a split decision. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Um, that was probably the toughest fight, just because Southpaw, super, super defensive on the timing. He was just the highest level one.
When you look at that transition from the amateur level to the pro level, what are some of the things that you're able to take from the amateurs into the pro level, and what's the biggest learning curve, would you say?
Learning curve just being the defense for the most part. The defense is a little bit different. You got smaller gloves, meaning, I mean, you're thinking 10 to 8 ounce gloves, but in an amateur glove, you have 10 ounces right at the hand versus an 8 ounce glove pro glove. It's all around. So it's way smaller.
Hmm.
So the defense is different. You have to be on it, headgear. But really everything else was the same. Going in, it's the same kind of style fights. Um, I'm just fighting people that are older than me usually.
Hmm. Now that you're a seasoned veteran, you're really making a name for yourself in the pros. Your last fight, a great fight, tough fight against Rudy Garcia. When you sat back and watched it for the first time after having gone through it, what kind of impact did that have on you, and what did you think?
Well, I mean, I thought even rewatching it, that I thought that I had the fight won for sure. I think I had it like 6 rounds to 4, so it was a close fight.
Hmm.
But I still have myself winning. But I did take away, some things that I definitely didn't see in the fight, that that I didn't see during the fight, that I did see afterwards, and that's just what we went to work on this fight. So that's what we expect to show out.
When you have a close fight like that, does that stick in the back of your mind? Like, all right, come on, let's do that again. Let's have another go at it. I want that guy now.
Yeah, for sure. That's the fight that I kept asking for. It didn't happen for whatever reason. I'm not really sure. Probably politics. Um, but it's gonna happen eventually.
Going into this fight, I know that you talked a little bit about your experiences with Shakur Stevenson, Southpaw. You've got a guy here in Alberto Torress who's a Southpaw. Um, is that one of the driving factors? Is just kind of getting the experience of another Southpaw, another different look, something to kind of put back into kind of a tool in your belt.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the amateurs, we trained, which was for Shakur, for the best southpaw that we knew, and so that really helped me transition into fighting any southpaws, because now I can fight a southpaw the same way I can fight a right-handed. It doesn't necessarily change my style or anything. Obviously, punches come from the other side, but it's really easy for me to adjust to it.
Last question for me. When you look at 2022, I'm curious, do you look at it in terms of kind of like micro goals versus macro goals? Meaning like, all right, I want to do this in 2022. This is how I want to figure things out. Not necessarily, like, obviously you want to win a world title. I mean, that's the ultimate
Mhm.
goal. But as far as 2022 goes, what is it that you're hoping to accomplish this year in order for you to call it a success?
I would still, I want to win. I want to go still undefeated. The draw is a draw, but I'm still undefeated. I want to finish out undefeated, and I want to be in the top 10 or top 15 by the end of the year.
I think those are good goals to have, and I think they're definitely reachable. You've obviously put in the work. You've been around for a long time, and you've been doing great things. So, Victor, thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you.